In Chapter 12, we are learning how to analyze or to look at our investments to see if they're doing well or not. So in this first problem, we have a division. It gives us some information regarding the division. It says if the asset base is decreased by 100,000, so the original asset base is 400. It's asking us if the base went down by 100, what would be the ROI? So your basic ROI formula is to take operating income and divide it by the operating assets. It tells us that our operating income here is 50,000. We're calculating it if the assets were to go down by 100, which would leave you with $300,000 of assets. So when you work that out, that is going to give you an ROI of 16.67%. So your answer on number 1 is B. On number 2, it says that we have a turnover and a margin. It's asking for ROI. Make sure you also understand the second way to calculate ROI is you can also take the margin and multiply it by the turnover. So your margin here is 10%. Your turnover is 4.2. So that's going to give you an ROI equal to 42%. So your answer on number 2 is C. 3 and 4, we're going to use the same set of facts. We have income, we have sales, we have beginning of the year assets, we have end of the year assets. The first question is asking you to calculate the margin. Remember, your formula for margin is to take operating income and divide it by the sales. Our operating income is 86,000. Our sales are 225,000. So that's going to give you a margin equal to 38%. So your answer on 3 is C. Then it's asking for ROI. Again, I like to always write down the easiest formula to see if we can work it that way. So it's operating income divided by your average operating assets. We know how much the operating income is. That's easy. It tells us that it's 86,000. We do, however, need to divide it by average operating assets. You're going to use average operating assets if it gives you a beginning and an ending balance. In this case, it does. So we need to calculate average operating assets. To calculate average operating assets, you simply want to take the assets at the beginning of the year, add to them the assets at the end of the year, and divide by 2. So that's going to give you average operating assets of 405,000. Once you have those average operating assets, then you can now calculate the ROI. So you have operating income of 86,000, average operating assets of 405. So that is going to leave you with an ROI equal to 21%. So your answer on number 4 is B. Now we want to use this set of facts for the next couple of questions. It gives you your sales information, it gives you income, it gives you assets, and that's what we originally have. Then it says that the manager can invest in an additional project that would require a $40,000 investment in additional assets and would generate $6,000 of additional income. So what happens if you have a question that talks about taking on an additional project is that you're not going to get rid of the original project, okay? So you have a project currently, okay? You currently have an asset that is generating $60,000 of income. All we're looking at is taking on an additional project. So we would have the $375,000 asset plus the $40,000 asset. Okay, so based on that information, we're going to answer the next couple of questions. Number 5 says, what is the residual income for the division without the additional investment? So basically what it's asking you for is the residual income based on the original investment, the original asset being the $375,000 asset. So to calculate residual income, your formula is to take your operating income, subtract from that the operating asset times the desired ROI, minimum rate of return, targeted ROI, desired rate of return. All of those are synonymous terms. So to calculate residual income, we want to take your operating income. So your original operating income is $60,000. Original operating asset is $375,000. It tells us that our minimum rate of return is 14%. So the 52.5 is basically just indicating that this is the minimum amount of income that we want the asset to generate. But this asset is actually generating $60,000, so that's a good thing, right? We are generating $7,500 of income above and beyond what the company requires. So it's the residual, it's the extra income that we're earning. Now for 6, it's asking what is the residual income with the additional project? Okay, so with the additional project means we have a $375 asset plus the new $40,000 asset. Okay, so obviously the formula is the same. So now that we take on this new asset, now our operating income is going to be $66,000, okay? Because the original income is 60 plus an extra 6, so the total income, if we accept the new project, is 66,000, okay? Then same thing for the operating assets. The original operating assets were 375. We're going to add to that another asset that's 40,000. So 375 plus 40,000 gives you the new assets, which are 415. So your new asset base is 415,000. Minimum rate of return is still 14%. So when we work through that, the residual income is 7,900. So if you're trying to decide whether this is a good investment or not, the residual income was $7,500 originally, but if I take on the new investment, now my residual income goes up to $7,900. So any increase in the residual income is a good thing. That means you would want to accept that new investment. You would want to take this $40,000 investment. Now we've got a couple of questions that are vocabulary / conceptual. Number 7 says the practice of delegating decision-making authority to the lower levels of management is, and your answer is decentralization. Okay, so decentralization is your answer on 7. Number 8, you have a segment that manufactures and sells blankets. The various models are produced in a single factory, and then they're sold in the sales department. All of this happens within the same segment. So the segment is most probably accounted for as and it's going through the different centers. Now remember, a cost center is something that only has costs. Yes, we have costs here because we manufacture, but we also sell. So if you're selling something, you're generating revenue as well. B is a revenue center. A revenue center would be one in which you only have sales. Well, we don't. We have expenses because we're manufacturing. Now, a profit center is one in which you have revenues and expenses, and that's what we have here. We manufacture the blanket. That means expenses, and then we sell the blanket, which equals revenue. So this segment of the company is a profit center. Number 9 says a positive result that stems from the use of ROI is that it encourages managers to focus on. This is just coming from a slide that we went over in class. Has a focus on the relationship among sales, expenses, and investment. Well, that's a true statement, right? Because for ROI, it's income. So if we write down the formula, ROI equals operating income divided by operating assets. So income comes from sales and expenses, so that's true. Has you focus on cost efficiency? Well, that's also true, because if you're cost efficient, then that means your expenses are low, so it makes your income higher, which gives you a higher ROI. Operating asset efficiency, well, that's true, because to have a high ROI, you want the asset number to be as low as possible. And then the efficient use of resources in generating income, well, that's also a true statement. We want to generate as much income as possible. So your answer on 9 is E. Number 10, it says Division A had an ROI of 15% last year. The manager is considering an additional investment for the coming year. What step will the manager likely choose? So it's assuming that we're evaluating everything simply based on ROI. So it says accept the investment as long as it provides positive operating income. Well, that's a false statement, because if you're the division manager of A and you already have an ROI of 15, you don't want to drop below that. Okay, you only want to accept additional investments that are going to keep you at the 15% ROI, if that's what you're being evaluated on. So A is wrong. Accept the investment as long as ROI is positive. Again, wrong. We want it to be at 15%. Reject the investment if the return is more than 15%. Well, that's silly. If it's more than 15, we want it. So reject the investment if it's less than 15, and this would be your true statement. Regardless of whether the investment is actually good or not, if the ROI isn't equal to what you already have, then you are likely going to reject that investment. 11 says that the company had income of 10,000, average assets of 100, sales of 40. What is the ROI? So we have income and we have assets. So if that's the case, we can use our basic ROI formula, which is operating income divided by operating assets. So we have income of $10,000. Average operating assets, it tells us, are $100,000. So that's going to leave you with an ROI of 10%. So your answer on 11 is A. And then the last question, we have different divisions. So we've got three different divisions within the company. It says, what's your residual income of X? So we're looking at division X. We're looking for residual income. We want to write our formula down. And then fill in everything we know. So looking at division X, we have operating income of $36,000. We have operating assets of $300,000. The company has a targeted ROI of 15% for that division. So targeted ROI is the same thing as desired ROI. So if we do this, we have $36,000 minus $45,000. Okay, so based on the targeted ROI, this division needs to have operating income of $45,000, but we don't. It only has operating income of $36,000, which that means we have a negative residual income of $9,000. So we're making $9,000 less than what we really need to. So that means division X is not living up to expectations, and within the company, managers would actually want to consider possibly getting rid of division X because it's not meeting expectations. If you have any questions to any of these practice problems, please let me know.